Hey, Ange.
Hey, Les. Listen, guys, we are going to be taking a little break. We need a vacation. And so we thought we would bring back some early episodes that you've enjoyed. So we're going to bring back some episodes from our season 2 and season 4. The first one, let me just give you a warning. We're going to be talking about a part of the body that a lot of people associate with taboos and shame and also pleasure and intimacy. And we see it as a part of the body, just like all the parts of the body, as being God-given. And so Leslie's going to talk about the guests that we had on for this episode. Who did we have on, Les?
So we introduced Dr. Maria Sophocles. She's a board-certified OB-GYN physician. And I've actually known Maria probably upwards of 20 years by now. We started out as colleagues, and I came to know her and we became close to the point where we're really good friends. And Maria, over the years, has really, in addition to a thriving medical practice in Princeton, New Jersey, she has really transitioned her career and developed her career into a very niche area. She talks about women's female sexuality after 50, perimenopausal sexuality, and she also is very direct and intentional about teaching about female pleasure.
Yes.
Female sexual pleasure. So you can only imagine the wonderful conversations that she and I have while I'm providing anesthesia and she's doing gyne procedures in the office. In fact, she has been one of the with one of the early developments of a line of vibrators and sex toys, which are proudly displayed in every room in her office. So it's a very interesting place to be and very female-centered and empowered. So this episode, we talk a little bit about the clitoris. And my co-host here, she have a couple of things to say.
I've got opinions.
Fact, she hasn't calmed down about it yet.
Just a little bit.
So we hope you enjoy the rewatch of this episode, and be sure to leave comments and let us know what you think now. And while we're at it, be sure to press like and subscribe.
Thank you.
Well, hello.
Hello. Let's do a Mrs. Doubtfire. Hello.
Look at us. Here we are again, and I'm so excited. I'm always excited. Actually, excited is my baseline.
Yeah.
So I'm at my baseline excitement. No, I'm a little bit above that, actually. So welcome to another episode of Black Boomer Besties from Brooklyn.
Brooklyn.
All right, ask me why I'm excited, Ange.
Leslie, why are you excited?
Because I have a gorgeous young lady here that is our guest today, and she's going to excite us in a way that, that was an interesting choice of words.
That was a good one.
Yeah, pun intended.
Pun intended.
And I'm going to tell you why I'm excited, but later, because I think, doubly excited.
Okay.
So you'll hear that story.
All right. Just no funny noises from that corner.
I can make as many funny noises as I choose.
That is.
I'm a grown-ass woman. Okay, go.
That's true. Okay. So the beautiful lady in the coral shirt is Dr. Maria Sophocles. You're going to find out about her, and you're going to love her as much as I've loved her for, well, I know it's well over 10 years, but it could be about 14 years that we've been working side by side together.
It's felt like 2 years. Oh, well, maybe
Yeah,
8.
yeah. And you and I have a psychic connection that I'm going to mention also because I was thinking about it earlier. But I'm going to read your bio a little bit. Dr. Maria Sophocles is a board certified OB-GYN with more than 25 years of medical experience. She is the medical director of Women's Healthcare of Princeton, a progressive and innovative women's health practice in Princeton, New Jersey. That's an understatement.
Mm.
Dr. Sophocles understands the spectrum of issues women face from their teens through post-menopause. Women of any age want a physician they can trust, Dr. Sophocles says. I spend time with my patients so they can share intimate issues and complex problems. That's just a tidbit of who she is and what she does. So let me just set the stage when you walk into her office. It's a beautiful, women-led and forward office with warm, soothing colors. It does not look like a medical practice at all. And there are these giant photographs of women of all stages, races, diversity. There's and colors, and just the mood is just calm and so inviting. And when I hear from her patients who they become our patients, the things that they say about you are just, it's just wonderful. Very special, very special. So I'm going to turn it over to you to introduce yourself and say a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Well, first, thank you so much, Leslie and Angela, for having me. I'm not from Brooklyn, and I wish I was a Black bestie, but I am a kind of a boomer. So, I hit 2 of the 4, and I'm just so happy to be here. I love the woman connection. I love that. I think this is a forum for open, honest conversation.
Absolutely.
And boy, do women need that. Boy, have we been put into boxes and told to behave and be quiet and be nice. And
absolutely.
I know the phrase, good, nice women rarely make history, but there's nothing wrong with being nice, but there's also nothing wrong with advocating for yourself. And for feeling like you want to hear from others who are going through the same thing or just to learn something. And that's always been the mission of my practice. Women's Healthcare of Princeton is a progressive place for open communication where there is no judgment based on race, religion, gender identity, anything like that. So it's a place women have felt safe to come be themselves, express themselves, find out who they are, or redefine who they are. And I've been so lucky to know Leslie for so long and watch her just, weave her clinical magic. And, you all think of her as a podcaster, but I know her as this spectacular and empathic anesthesiologist who takes people at their most vulnerable and their most terrified and makes them feel they're safe and they're cared for and lets me be able to do my thing with them and help them. And so she's just been a colleague for me, but more like a clinical sister, really.
We make a really good team, and the patients say all the time how helpful it is. Let me just give you a little tidbit into her office. When you come in, and you know how in an office you need to disrobe, you'll get a warmed robe in her practice.
No way.
Yeah, and
people say, I've never had that before.
Why would you not want that? Why would you not want that?
Unheard of.
Yeah.
But why wouldn't you? Now that you've said it.
Yeah.
Well, I always think about what would I want? And they're cold. Offices are cold so that they're clean. But cold just adds to your anxiety. So I feel like warm is such a simple, soothing thing.
Yes.
We try to let them listen to the music they want. So we have little speakers that they can speak into to get the music they like. And I remember one woman came in covered in tattoos and nose ring and earrings. And I thought, oh, I wonder what music she'll choose. And she said, I'm really nervous. Could I get Frank Sinatra? And I said, really? Okay. I didn't mean to be so
You
judgmental.
cannot judge a book. You cannot judge a book by its cover.
I did it. I was so ashamed of myself. She said, I just need some Frank Sinatra. I said, okay.
Yeah.
But thanks. We love it. It's been there 15 years. We have 25,000 patients from all over the country, but mostly from the Northeast.
Yes.
Women come from far away because we don't do any obstetrics. It's only gynecology. And it focuses on the things that fall under the radar in a traditional OB-GYN practice, such as pediatric and adolescent gynecology. Kids and teens need help too sometimes, and their pediatricians often don't know how to help. Menopause is, of course, the biggest.
That's a big deal that you deal with.
Yes. And in our office, we pioneered the use of a laser that regenerates vaginal tissue. It was the first office in the country to have this. So women find that out. So they come to have bladder help or sexual discomfort helped, skin diseases of the vulva helped. We take care of urology. We take care of geriatrics and pelvic pain, terrible pain syndromes that really need time. So I decided just to collect all those little things that a regular practice doesn't want to do in depth and just train for I probably spent a decade going around the country training with the experts in all these things and then bringing that back to Princeton and then training 6 women under me to do it too. So it is different. I mean, we do regular pap smears and checkups, but we like to focus on these little things.
On the different things. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. The things that you won't necessarily get in another place.
No wonder you have 25,000. I mean, 25. Let's call that 25,001 because I will. I will be reaching out to you.
25,000, Angela. I forgot to tell you that. No, it's a very special. It's a very special place, and I'm not modest about it at all. But because we hear every day, and Leslie hears this too. Thank you. I've been to 5 doctors, or thank you. I'm a trans woman, and I was actually excused from 3 practices, or thank you, I have severe pain and I've just been told it was a yeast infection for 10 years. So it's really gratifying to not dismiss and brush off and to listen and to give people permission. I mean, those are the 2 things that are critical, I think. So it's been a journey for me. Yeah.
There's a room in her practice that has a showcase full of dildos and stimulation toys. Sex toys. Yes. And
were you trying? Excuse me, Leslie. Were you trying to
find a euphemism?
Package it? Were you trying to package that into
in a clinical way?
Little. Okay.
This doesn't all have to be.
If I may, let me jump in and explain how, at least from my vantage point, how this all came to be, because there was this cataclysmic occurrence that brought you to be here, Maria. So maybe a year or 2 ago, I was doing some research and trying to pull together information for women in my age group to push their comfort around their sexuality a bit. So one of the places that I ended up is the TED Talks site, and I stumbled upon this this TED Talk by Maria Russak about the clitoris. And let me tell you, when I first saw that organ, not the tip of the organ, but the entirety of the organ, I got so angry that in my, at that time, 58, 59 years on the planet, that was withheld from me in all of the education that I've had, being a mother, all of those things times 3, that had never been shown to me, I was so angry.
Mm-hmm.
I was so angry. And Leslie, of course, heard about it because I speak to Leslie at least
often
4 or 5
about
times a
it.
day.
So you did start talking about the clitoris. And Les,
Yes.
did you know? And
yes.
I said,
And then wait, hold up. And then for our Patreon, which is where our subscribers get extra content through a subscription service called Patreon, I put a question to ask for some topics that they would want to see for this season, our season 4. And one of the topic suggestions that I gave is, do you want to hear about women's sexual health? I think I may have mentioned clitoris specifically. And that is what was the most asked for, right? And then, Leslie, you can take it from here because that all happened. And then,
okay,
go ahead.
So I told you, Maria and I have a cosmic spiritual connection.
Yeah.
I don't know where it comes from. She's a white Greek, beautiful lady. I'm a black boomer from Brooklyn, but we get into these conversations and the similarities and we like see each other eye to eye.
Mm.
I said, Maria, you should come on our podcast at some point. My co-host is always talking about the clitoris and she's saying about this and that and whatever. Maria stops me and says, I just turned in a chapter in a book about the clitoris, like probably days prior to this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly what she was talking about. It was like I had just spent the last couple of weeks immersed in all this detail.
Right.
Now I've forgotten it all already. I'm sorry, guys. But no. No, but
well, just a tenth of it that you remember will be more than
will be good. Yeah, otherwise everyone will go to sleep.
So I'm like, Ange, this is big, This
is big.
Yeah.
It's big. I am so looking forward to this. You have no idea. You have no idea.
Specifically, I'll say what made you angry, Ange, is how, one, that this is not an organ that we hear about. It's anatomy.
Well, when you hear about it, you hear about the almost the smallness of it is something, this little thing, or it's this point, or it's this. I know everything about the penis.
Mm-hmm.
I know everything about the penis, and I know
everyone
nothing.
does.
I mean, it's in every medical book. It's on, I could sketch it out. You
How many works of art, Ange? How many works of art? How many sculptures over centuries and millennia have we seen with the penis? It's you would have to be deaf, dumb, and blind not to know what a penis looks like.
So that is where my anger came from. That is where it came from.
I can take your anger and raise it one, because as a woman, I would be angry. As a mother, I would be angry. As a sexual being, I am angry.
Yes.
As a physician trained in women's health, I was livid. So you would think I would have been taught this, right? You would definitely think. Right. But I think the story of when we learn the anatomy of the clitoris bears repeating. And before we say that, I will tell you guys a quick story about when I first was aware of the discrepancy between the prioritization of the penis and the clitoris. And it was in 1988. I was taking anatomy in medical school, and we all were assigned a cadaver, male or female. And the anatomy professor, this buttoned up white guy, says, now, when we get to the pelvis, if those of you lucky enough to have a male cadaver, please share with the people who got a female cadaver, because frankly, there's not much going on down there.
Wow.
Can you imagine in an anatomy class? So the whole semester, the man never said vagina. He never said vulva. He never said clitoris. He said, move over to the male cadaver and learn from them. So that was 1988. And I mean, that was my first wake up that something's not right.
Yeah.
Why do we not count We have babies through there.
Yeah.
Anyway, flash forward to me researching this book and learning that Gray's Anatomy, the most esteemed anatomy textbook that, right, Leslie, everybody learns Gray's Anatomy.
Gray's Anatomy. They
And
made
this is
TV show
G-R-A-Y,
about
not
it.
They have
G-R-E-Y,
40
G-R-A-Y.
G-R-A-Y, yeah, not the show. Although we could probably learn about the clitoris from that show too.
Yeah.
But anyway, probably more. But Gray's Anatomy, the esteemed textbook, has 40 something editions. I'm going to say 44, but I could be off there.
Mm-hmm.
The correct anatomy of the clitoris was not included, hold this, until 2005 edition. They did not get the correct clitoral anatomy added to that textbook until 2005. Shame. For shame.
For shame.
That's disgusting.
For shame.
That's gross.
Yeah.
It really is. It really is. That puts so much of how our society is structured into perspective. Just that fact alone.
It is. It speaks
It's a
about the
proxy.
patriarchy, for sure.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I don't, they didn't miss it. It wasn't important.
It wasn't important.
And it wasn't important enough to dissect. Like Leslie will tell you, when you go through medical school, you dissect
Everything part of the
except
cadaver that you
the
have.
clitoris. Except the clitoris. So no one had dissected the clitoris fully. People had made little thoughts until she dissected it in the late 90s, but she didn't really get it right until was 2005. An Australian urologist, the first urologist in Australia, was a woman named Helen O'Connell.
Mhm.
You can Google this. It's an amazing story.
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, this is weird. How come nobody knows what's behind the little nub? It's
Right.
gotta be something.
Wow.
So she did MRIs on cadavers, and the MRI showed her that there is an 8-centimeter bilobed penguin-looking shape with 2 arms and 2 bulbs. Not so different than a penis with a scrotum.
Yes.
But ours is all internal. And
Right.
when I say 8 centimeters, you guys should know, like, spread your fingers. That's
huge.
how wide that is. That's huge.
Wow.
Nobody thinks of their clitoris as bigger than their fingertip.
Yes.
Exactly.
But that's truly the tip of the iceberg. And the
Right.
iceberg's almost all underwater, meaning
Right.
almost all internal.
Yes.
But boy, does that have a lot of nerve endings.
Yes.
And that's another crazy story.
Right.
The full number of nerve endings was published last year, 2022.
You are lying.
No, and when I
You're
tell you what
lying.
they've been using, no,
What?
it was a gay male plastic surgeon finally did microscopic evaluation and found that the fingertip, which we all know is full of nerve endings, has 4,000 nerve endings. A penis has, I want to say 8 to 10,000.
Right.
The clitoris has closer to 15,000. So it's more than the penis, more than a fingertip.
What?
And thank goodness for this plastic surgeon, because
Wow.
guess what? The figure that was in all our textbooks
Right.
this is the mic drop thing, was not even from humans. It was from the clitoris of cows.
Oh
That
my
the
God.
textbooks were using a figure
No.
from cows.
No. No.
So, I mean,
No.
Yes, I'm not
No.
kidding. If that doesn't tell you that the
makes you angry.
patriarchy in medicine
Yes.
hasn't even valued us enough to use human tissue,
Right.
just stick it in the textbook. Nobody's gonna know.
Yeah.
Use a cow, close enough. I don't even want to
Right.
go there. What the heck that means.
With the heifer.
Right.
The
You know
heifer,
what I was
I mean-
thinking? We even know about the spleen, and I still, you guys correct me whether it's now understood what purpose the spleen has. When I learned about it, but we knew about the fucking spleen and not about the organ that brings women and people with vaginas pleasure.
Pleasure. And that's the other thing that this all means, is that female sexual pleasure has not been prioritized, has been deprioritized, not for 10 years, not for 20, for millennia. For millennia. So these are messages passed down century after century that sex is for, number one, procreation. We're the vessel for that. Number two, male pleasure. Penis and vagina, ejaculate, male pleasure. Easy. And it's like they forgot the rest of the story.
I don't think they forget. I think that it's deliberate. I think that it's one of those things. If there was ever some discovery of it, they just covered it up. I can't imagine, because if you're doing surgeries down there, and you guys tell me if I got this, what is to make sure that you're not cutting, or what is to make sure that you're not in some way damaging this organ if you don't even recognize its existence as a part of an important part of our bodies?
Because the damage isn't considered important. Look at female genital mutilation.
Yes, I was thinking about that.
There are 200 million women worldwide who have been mutilated as of 2023. That is that is not a rare thing. That's enormous. And the fact that all those women are intentionally having those nerves destroyed tells you that female pleasure in some cultures is actually maybe a threat. I don't know. It's something beyond.
You have to hide that.
Sorry to cut you off, but I actually heard that that was practiced here until definitely the 20th century, because just like other parts of our body, like the penis, for example, different shapes and sizes, right? They all basically are the same, but they have different shapes and sizes. Same with the clitoris. And when they were considered bigger, I'd read that they thought those people were hermaphrodites, and they would cut them. So it may have been a cultural practice. It may be a cultural practice, but it was not off the table in the United States of America either as something that was discounted or something to be erased because it doesn't have value. So I just probably in the last few months read that. So I just wanted to insert that there too, because we sometimes are aghast at things that happen elsewhere. I
was just going to say,
you know what I mean?
That gives us permission to ostracize other cultures if we call it medical. Here.
Well, do you want to hear something, Leslie? Overseas, mostly in Africa, but in the Middle East as well, a huge percentage of the female genital mutilation is done by clinics or clinicians, not because it's medical, because the families now think they're evolved. So instead of having your aunt do it in a field, I'm going to take you to the clinic so the doctor can sew you up properly or whatever. But like two wrongs don't make a right, guys.
Sure, absolutely.
And that's happening in our country.
I've had a couple of patients, I believe they were from Africa, who've had the clitoridectomies. And the degree of scarring and mutilation and the difficult menstruation with the area that's just closed. And it's just awful trying to do any corrective procedures on people,
Very awful. And the emotional trauma is enormous, and the stigma and the but I think we're kind of getting to a very dark
let's
place.
Let's talk about the pleasure part. Can we pivot to pleasure, please?
We're going to pivot to pleasure. And we were saying there's lots of nerve endings, so that's good. I think an important thing, though, because pleasure eludes a lot of women, and for different reasons. Okay, I get women coming in every day saying, I can't have an orgasm, or I've never had an orgasm, or I'm in menopause now, my orgasms are wimpy, they're a thing of the past. So I think it's kind of important to understand a couple things. One is that the clitoris is responsive to testosterone. It's the homologue of the penis, right? So believe it or not, as we lose estrogen in menopause, we lose a little testosterone as well. We don't have much testosterone. We have about 1/10 of what men have. But when we lose that little smidge and it goes from a little bit to a smidge, that can have profound effects on libido, but also on sexual performance. And then when we lose estrogen as well, there are estrogen receptors all around the clitoris as well. So the clitoris actually has fewer nerve endings. So less pleasure is theoretically an outcome, and fewer blood vessels. So it's not, if that's you, and if you feel that your orgasms have changed to just become, I call it wimpy, but more faint or take longer or something, there's nothing necessarily wrong with you. That's the biology of aging. The good news is a little topical estrogen can help that. And it's perfectly safe. It does not cause cancer. Topical estrogen has been around since 1946, has been studied since 1946. And it's hard to say the word never in medicine, but I can say it here. It has never been shown to be associated with breast cancer or any cancer. Now, I'm talking about topical vaginal estrogen. I'm not talking about pills and something systemic. And it takes about 3 months, but it's helpful. And if that's not enough help, there is, and this is another patriarchal, horrible, obvious thing, there is no FDA approved testosterone for women in this country.
I'm going to ask you that.
No, there is in other countries, but in our country, we do not have it. It doesn't exist. And it's so expensive to get a new drug to market, and no one seems to want to invest the probably several $100 million. Right.
Because of course our sexual pleasure comes from a man. It comes from penetration.
Oh, it's the only way, right?
What else? What else is there? Wasn't it Freud who said that if women don't have an orgasm that way, something's wrong with them? Literally, I think he said they were crazy.
Yes, Freud set us back more than almost anyone, because he said you have to have an orgasm only from vaginal penetration or you're not a mature, evolved woman. So let's just call bullshit on that now. Bullshit. I'm sure he, made other amazing contributions to psychiatric literature, but he had his own issues with women. And here's the irony, what Freud didn't know is that because the clitoris anatomically is all behind and wrapped around the vagina, the 20% of women who do have vaginal orgasms are actually stimulating the clitoris through the vaginal walls. So they're all clitoral. Even vaginal orgasms are clitoral. So sorry, Siggy, you were so wrong about that.
Sorry, Siggy. No, you did not say so.
That's going to be like hashtag sorry,
Siggy.
Well, he did a lot of damage because women then felt they were broken if they couldn't have an orgasm vaginally. And that's another myth we have to bust today, on this program. Bust that you not having an orgasm from penetration does not mean something's wrong with you. It means you're in the group of 80+% women on the planet who can only have an orgasm from clitoral stimulation with a finger, a mouth, a vibrator, a strap on. I don't care. And it doesn't matter. But there's nothing wrong with you. And if you feel you're struggling to climax or struggling to have what you want to have, I think it's okay to go back to basics. It's okay to say, I'm not going to worry about what happens with my partner. I'm going to take a shower or a bath, and I'm going to touch myself and figure out what feels good, what doesn't, and what feels good, and how does that feel? Is it pressure? Is it water? Is it my finger? Is it something? And find the courage, maybe talk in the mirror first, or to your black boomer bestie, and say, this is practice. You got to practice.
Yeah.
I you're not complaining, and you're not going to hurt anybody's feelings. A smart man wants you to have pleasure, and say, this is what feels good, and this doesn't.
Yes.
If you're not sure and you think something's wrong, you can go to an OB-GYN to check it out. Although now we know many OB-GYNs are not well trained in sexual health.
Right.
And that brings up another question. What if you need more than a gynecologist? Or what if your gynecologist is kind of lame and says, I don't know, drink wine?
Yeah.
There are sex coaches.
You're hilarious.
Well, I've heard this 100 times. Women come in and say, my GYN said he just tells his wife to drink wine before sex. And I thought, oh my God, where do I start? First of all, not medical, not clinical, insulting.
Disrespecting.
It's like Mrs. Doubtfire. Remember Mrs. Doubtfire? She said, Mr. Doubtfire's idea of foreplay was, Effie, brace yourself. Remember that? I love that. I mean, like, God, like, brace yourself. Okay. Wow. We got to do better than that. And we doctors have to do better. And doctors have to do better.
Because if people come to us for help, it's up to us then to get the information if we don't already have it.
That's right.
You're right. Obviously, in medical school, I too did not learn about the clitoris, not much about the vagina. I definitely had a male cadaver. But it wasn't stressed, because that part is not important.
Right.
And as of today, 2023, 2/3 of all training programs still don't have a single lecture on menopause, much less sexual health. So we're failing. We've got to revamp this.
Failing.
And that's why you have to create practices like yours.
I wish there were more. Yeah.
Well, I think women have to demand it too. You know?
Yes.
Well, I'm not going back to you. I found this other place that treats my entire body. Not
my entire personhood.
Yes, sexual health is part of human health, and it's never been considered that. It's been considered some private thing or fun thing. And we know there are plenty of studies that show that sexual health reduces depression, reduces heart disease, increases longevity. I mean, these are real studies. These are real medical studies. And I mean, heck, that's a good reason to have an active and prolonged sex life. We're all looking at health optimization, right?
And remember, women, as we've just heard about all of these nerve endings, that can happen with or without a partner. You don't have to only get these benefits with someone alongside you. You can get them on your own.
Yeah.
However you want, with
single,
help,
divorced,
or without.
widowed. You can do it. You can do it. And sex toys have really come back in vogue. They kind of tend to come in and out of favor. There has been an explosion of companies designing and selling all kinds of sex toys. And I used to do this for a Swedish company, and it's really fun. And one of the trends is
you used to do what for the Swedish company? Were you a demonstrator?
No, I was the designer.
Well, you're the model.
My husband was wishing I would bring them all home, I think. But the point is that they used to all look like penises because they were all designed by men. Now, many sex toys are not so threatening looking. They puff air, or they vibrate, or radio waves, and they're for the clitoris, but they're also for the vulva, for the breast, for the thighs. So I tell patients, if you're intimidated by that, I give them homework. I say, I want you to do G-rated masturbation. They say, what's that? I say, it's non-genital. I want you to take that little vibrating thing that looks like a mouse for your computer, because they don't look like penises. And in the shower, use it on your legs or your arms and see what feels good. And don't give yourself the pressure of, I have to have an orgasm. That's prefer that,
Sure.
Oh,
that's another hashtag, G-rated masturbation.
Yes, for sure. Now, that reminds me, like, this type of thing would be so helpful for those patients of ours that come in where their cultural beliefs dictate that they're not supposed to. Now, this is now women now internalizing it, because I guess they've been grown up or taught this or whatever, that they're not supposed to experience pleasure from.
I don't know where that isn't the case, Les.
So gynecologic exams are difficult for them and anxiety provoking, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
It's almost like anything below the waist is taboo.
Yeah. But Les, I mean, I grew up partially in Jamaica, partially in the United States. I think that is so absolutely here also. It's not an other thing. That's how I was raised. That's how I felt. There's nothing. I've lived in America for almost over 50 years now. So it's a part of our how we are socialized also, very much so. I don't think, do you think that is not so in America?
It is.
No, that's
but
so,
we don't
for
want to
sure.
admit that.
Yeah, well, we're going to admit it here. We're not going to just, use that crazy talk. We're going to do crazy talk. It's like, go get it together. Can't y'all catch up to America? Hell no.
Yeah. I had a patient who was Catholic from Ireland.
Yeah.
This isn't casting judgment. It's just giving color.
Right.
And she told me in Catholic school, they were taught that the girls were taught, not the boys. They separated them for this lesson. Mm-hmm. Because the boys' masturbation is fine. It's just what boys do.
Yeah,
but for the girls, they were taught masturbation was a bigger sin than murder. Murder. Wow. To little girls, they told that.
Wow.
So
how do you undo that type of damage?
Wow.
I don't know. Wow. I don't know. You help normalize it. You help them say, you're entitled. God, you know what I did? This woman was very religious. Mm-hmm. So I met her where she was. And I said, well, God designed your body. She said, yes, God designed my body. And I had to say that because I knew that's what she believed. So I had to meet her where she was.
Yes.
And I said, no, would God design something whose sole function was pleasure?
Yes.
If pleasure was bad?
Right.
She said, I guess not.
Exactly.
She said, I guess that pleasure is part of God's plan. Exactly. I said, yes, it is, because he allows pleasure for men. Mm-hmm. And I was desperate to help her. So I had to think about
that is exactly true.
What would click,
Yeah.
Man, that's out of the box thinking that is so common in your practice. And as I said, we've been working together way over 10 years, probably about 14. And always.
Yeah.
You just
but it's funny. You mentioned Catholicism, and I'm going to broaden it to Christianity. What the Bible does talk about is male masturbation being because it's wasting it's wasting the seed, let's say.
Yes.
So that's their issue. That's not our issue. Even in the Bible, that's not our issue. All the other stuff is man's stuff that is put upon women. It is not. That is not biblical. Not in the Bible that I've read.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, question about how did you come to contribute a chapter to a book, and what was the book in its entirety about?
Well,
and then talk about the TED Talk.
Yeah. So the book is a book written by me. The book is my book. It's not published yet. I'm searching for a publisher, but the book is about sex in midlife and what happens to sex in midlife and what it says about us as a society.
Yes.
But the chapter I'm referring to talks about the history of the clitoris and how it goes from the Egyptians to the Greeks to the Renaissance, and how even famous anatomists were denying it, and even though their little nobody assistants would sneak in at night and try to dissect it and say, I think there's something there. And they would say, oh, hush, nothing for women. So I do a little chapter on the history of the clitoris and why it's been so delayed and really what that says about us. So that's within this bigger book talking about the disparity between sexual expectations and capabilities between men and women in midlife. That gets wide.
Not accidental.
Right.
No, it's there from the start because of how we learn and what's okay and masturbation and pleasure and all that. And then in midlife, because we lose estrogen, vaginal walls get thin, blood vessels go away, collagen degrades. That gap widens. So I felt this was worthy of a book. I felt there are 40 million American women with sexual issues directly related to menopause right now, today.
40 million.
40 million. And globally, there are 500 million women with menopause-related sexual issues. So I feel like this is too big a crowd to ignore any
Absolutely.
longer.
Absolutely.
So I'm excited to get that published, and maybe I'll come back on once it does.
That
We
would
can talk
Sure.
more about
That would be fantastic. We have a friend of the show called she has it was only a podcast, but it's really blown up her mission is called Black Girl's Guide to Surviving Menopause.
Nice.
So it kind of first focused on people who were experiencing menopause, but now it's become this intergenerational movement, if you will, because, we don't know that much about menopause. And imagine those younger women younger people with vaginas. I have to just make sure that I include non-binary folks also.
Right.
That what are they looking forward to? It's all gloom and doom.
Yeah.
Well,
Unless we give them new
have to
information
be.
about that.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be. If we can
Yeah.
educate and be educated, no
Right.
one's coming down the bike. And it allows us to be advocate for ourselves and be sexually
Absolutely.
more open with our partners and say, look, you know
Right.
how I liked it
Right.
like this at 35?
Yes.
Well, now I'm 48. Things don't
Yes.
feel the same. And let's
Yeah,
get
yeah,
creative
yeah.
together,
Yeah,
But
yeah.
instead, women hold all
Mhm.
that shame and guilt in,
Right.
and they
right.
come into my
Wow.
office and
And
say, I'm
suffer
broken. And I'm
Wow.
ruining it for him. They always tell
Yeah.
me,
Oh my
I'm ruining it
gosh.
for him.
That's
And
so
it's a horrible
sad.
thing to hear.
Yeah.
Wow.
And they had to have felt that for a while to bring it to their physician. You know what I mean?
That's right.
They've
Right.
been
And to feel
walking around
safe
with
enough
that.
to bring it to
Yeah.
their physician. Sure.
Well, thank God for
Or
your
desperate
book.
enough.
Yes.
Well,
oh my gosh.
I'm hoping it'll help with that. I know I do. Sometimes I'm a guest on this Sirius XM show, Dr.
Mhm.
Radio.
Mhm.
Oh, I
The
know it.
host
Yeah.
was a
Out of
student of mine.
NYU, right?
Yes, so
Mhm.
she has me on a lot, and whenever I do that show, the next day the phone rings off the hook in the office. I live in Indiana, and I'm getting in the car and driving, and my
Yeah.
staff are like, "Wait a minute, wait a minute,"
Right. There's a
because
need.
because they feel they haven't been heard. They've been going to their OB-GYN getting told to drink wine, and
Yes.
they feel like, wait, there is something wrong and there is something you can do, and they want it. Everyone thinks that women just lose all their drive.
Yeah.
Not every woman loses their drive, and some
Yeah.
women want to be intimate at 50, 60, 70, 80, 90. They
Sure.
want it.
Yeah.
Or that loss of or perceived loss of drive is due to that discomfort and the pain
That's right.
and so they're like, I guess it's over for me.
Mm.
Right. And so we always start with fixing the pain first. We fix the tissue,
Mhm.
make the vaginal epithelium thicker, healthier, stretchier, bring back the blood vessels, bring back moisture. We do this either with vaginal estrogen or vaginal progesterone. It's another hormone that does this, or an oral medication, ospemifene, that turns on estrogen receptors in the vagina.
Mm.
Or
Mhm.
we have a laser that we started in our
Oh,
office.
yeah.
It needs more research. I know it works, but it should have bigger studies to be used more widely. But it's been wonderful. It creates new blood vessels and creates new collagen, and
Mhm.
it's been great. So we have like 4 options to really make the tissue better. Once we do that, then we can say, okay, is your libido still rotten? If so, let's talk about how we make that better. And sometimes the libido gets better as soon as the pain is gone.
Sure.
So you're right.
Sure. Because nobody wants to, everybody runs away from pain.
Yeah.
Right.
You know?
Of course.
Sure.
Right. Well, I am so grateful that you are doing the work that you're doing. I must also say that I am not one of those women who have issues there. I am amazingly able to be pleasure.
Yay.
Okay.
No, I have there's no, and I want to say that too for those of us who fall into the category of having a beautiful, pleasurable body. that we're here also. It does not. It's not a given that this happens with aging. Even if it happens,
Correct.
The majority of the time, it doesn't have to be that way for you.
Yeah.
So,
No.
yeah.
But if you are, it
Yes.
is improvable. I think that's the
Yes,
thing.
and you
don't
should
have to
seek
throw in the
that.
towel.
You should
Right.
seek
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
And if your
Wow.
mother had breast cancer, that does not mean it's contraindicated for you. I
Mm.
wish I had a quarter for every time a woman said, I wish I could take vaginal estrogen, but my mom had breast cancer, so I can't.
Mhm.
That's one doesn't
Another myth.
equate the
Yeah.
other.
Yeah,
It doesn't.
yeah.
Your mom having breast cancer is a different human being. And even if it raises your breast cancer risk a tiny bit, why is it still okay for you to take vaginal estrogen? Because it's been studied for 70 years and never, ever been shown to be linked to breast cancer. So that if you leave with nothing else today, but the knowledge that vaginal estrogen is safe for you, whether your mom had breast cancer or not, you'll be doing yourself a huge favor in terms of advocating for your own health and sexual pleasure.
Yeah.
We
Well,
gotta keep talking about it. That's all. We
yeah,
just have
for
to keep
sure.
talking about it because people need to
sure.
hear it, and people don't know. I've learned so much in the last 45 minutes. It's like, and I went through
Same.
several years of medical school and anatomy class and whatever. Wow.
I cannot wait. Listen, publishers, get to it. Get to it. There's a book that we need.
Yeah.
Get to it.
Yeah.
I agree.
Wow.
I agree.
Amazing.
I think it will ring for people. I think they will nod and understand it. I can't thank you all enough for having me. It's been
This
so
has
nice
been
to
just
talk about this.
great. I'm glad that the schedule worked out and we were able to talk to you, and it was wonderful seeing you. I didn't work with you yesterday, but I was looking forward to seeing you today.
Yeah. I knew I was getting my Leslie fix this week.
Exactly. Well,
Angela, thank you for agreeing with Leslie's idea. I really enjoyed it.
Oh my gosh.
I hope we'll get to meet in person.
You were meant to be here. You really were. You were a prayer answered for me.
Speaking of prayer answered, I told you that we have a spiritual connection. Yes. So in addition to the story about the clitoris, I went in to work with Maria one day. And I said to her, I got news for you. We have a date. Omari's getting a kidney. I'm donating and Omari's getting a kidney. And Maria said, yesterday I had a dream that Omari got a kidney.
Mm-hmm. And I almost didn't tell you because I'd been hoping and praying for it too. And I thought it's not going to happen. It's been a long time.
He's been on dialysis for 6 years. She waited for me to tell her that he had a date. And she said, yesterday I had a dream about it. Why would she be dreaming about Omari and his kidney? Just out of the blue.
I know. And actually, you said, I have news. And I said, well, I have news too. And I said, go ahead, you go first. Because I wanted to tell her about the dream. But I was afraid it would upset her. And so I thought, if her news is really bad, I'm going to not tell her my dream.
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Wow.
But I don't believe in coincidences. So
that's right.
Yeah.
Of course,
that's right.
So this has been wonderful. I love you. Thank you.
Love you too,
Maria.
Angela.
Thank you.
This has been another episode of Black Boomer Besties from Brooklyn.